Night falls over the Blackwood farm as flames lick the broken walls, turning timber into embers under a blood-red sky. A lone silhouette stands amid the wreckage, rifle in hand, face streaked with dust and determination. This is Sarah Blackwood, a widow who once tended her homestead with quiet resolve, now forced into a battle for vengeance. Behind her, the desert stretches endlessly, a brutal ally and unforgiving enemy. Tonight, the secrets buried beneath these sands will be revealed, and those who sought to bury them will pay their debt. You've never seen survival like this. Every rustle in the wind could mean an enemy closing in. Every shadow hides a trap meticulously set. For 15 years, a stone, a gift from her late husband, rested in her safekeeping, concealing evidence powerful enough to shatter a shadowy empire. They thought they could break her spirit. They were wrong. Listen. The wind whispers, warning across the dunes. A distant hoofbeat echoes in the dark. The hunt begins now. Sarah Blackwood isn't running. She's striking back. And the desert will bear witness, unforgiving truth. The desert dawn broke over the horizon in hues of amber and rose. At the heart of this unforgiving landscape sat Blackwood Farm, a weathered stronghold carved from sand and stone. Its wooden beams had weathered decades of scorching sunlight and biting winds, yet they held firm against nature's assault. Sarah Blackwood, now 52, moved through the courtyard with steady purpose. Wrinkles mapped stories of hardship across her weathered face like the lines on an arid canyon wall, yet her eyes retained a fierce clarity, always scanning the horizon for danger or promise. Born of military discipline and desert survival, she embodied a quiet strength few could match. At her side was Michael, her only son at 24, carrying his father's broad shoulders and unwavering gaze. His stance was alert, every muscle ready to spring into action should the land or threats demand it. Together they tended crops in a mesh-protected greenhouse and checked hidden wells that drew precious water. 3 water sources concealed beneath the earth kept them alive long after the railroad and towns fell silent. They maintained a complex fence system reinforced by metal posts driven deep into resistant ground, each post a testament to resourcefulness in the unyielding bond between mother and son. Inside the 2-story home, faded photographs chronicled a life interrupted. The image of Captain James Blackwood in uniform stood at attention beside a younger Sarah in desert camouflage. Scenes of laughter and shared resolve were frozen in sepia tones on the mantelpiece. Since James's death on a covert mission 5 years earlier, their world had shrunk to routines of survival. At dawn, Sarah poured coffee into well-worn mugs, passing one to Michael, in a ritual both comforting and solemn. They spoke little, conserving energy and words for battles they both knew could come at any moment. But beneath the silence lay unspoken vulnerabilities and memories of laughter that once filled every corner. Outside the barn, Michael hammered new supports while Sarah inspected the rainwater collector for leaks. The greenhouse's mesh netting shielded resilient vegetables from desert storms, proof of their meticulous planning. Every element of their home had been designed with defense in mind: reinforced windows, hidden cellars, secret caches. A reinforced cellar beneath hardwood floors stored food, ammunition, and medical supplies to last months. At midday, the sun rose to its zenith, turning the sands into a furnace and driving them back to shaded interiors. In the kitchen, Sarah carefully cleaned her husband's hunting knife, a gift on their 10th anniversary. Steam curled from a simple pot of stew as Michael plotted irrigation lines for the coming storm season. His questions about life beyond the farm hung in the air, betraying a restless hunger for horizons he had only dreamed of. "I miss him," Michael confessed one afternoon, glancing at his mother with tired eyes. Sarah paused, the knife still in her hand, her voice soft but firm. "He built this place for us, for safety, for hope." In that moment, the past and future converged in their shared determination to honor James's legacy against any threat. The morning sun had barely crested the eastern dunes when Sarah noticed movement on the skyline. 6 riders, mounted and disciplined, advanced across the open desert toward the farm. Through binoculars, she watched their formation, too tight, too coordinated for mere travelers. Michael joined her at the watchtower, tensing as he studied the riders' deliberate pace. "They've got gear beneath their coats," he murmured. Voice low, "Looks military." Sarah's jaw tightened. "You heard James' protocol for unexpected visitors. We show hospitality, then deter if they threaten us." By the time the riders reached the outer fence, Sarah and Michael were arrayed on the porch rifles, resting casually but ready. Sarah's shotgun hung at her side. Michael's rifle cradled across his forearms. As the lead rider dismounted, he raised a gloved hand in greeting, tone polite. Afternoon, ma'am, he called, voice smooth, with a faint southern drawl. Mighty fine homestead you've got here. My friends and I strayed off the trail. Reckon we could trouble you for some water. He removed his hat and stepped closer, eyes scanning the reinforced windows. Sarah studied him, mid-50s weathered face, but eyes cold behind friendly words. Two companions led horses to the barn trough, while the other three lingered at careful intervals. Water's over by the barn, Sarah replied evenly. Help yourselves, then move on. The rider smiled, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. Much obliged, he turned to his comrades. Brooks Rodriguez, fill up our canteens. Then we'll be on our way. Michael's finger brushed the trigger guard. Ma Sarah lifted a hand. Let them drink. They watched as the men refilled canteens, their movements too precise, scanning the perimeter as they worked. Sarah kept her eyes on the lead rider, who approached the porch alone. He paused at the railing, nodding toward Michael. Your boy there, he said, studying Michael's stance, reminds me of someone I used to know. A flicker of recognition passed through Sarah's mind. She took a step forward. You mistake me for someone else. The man's polite smile slipped. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood, 5th Medical Battalion. You married to Captain James Blackwood, Special Forces. Michael straightened hand, hovering over his holster. Who are you? The rider's gaze hardened. Name's Mlan, served with your husband. We've come a long way, Mrs. Blackwood. Sarah's breath caught. Jimmy never let anyone call him that. Mlan's hand drifted to the pistol at his hip. We were colleagues, and now I've come to pay my respects and reclaim what he stole. In that moment, Sarah realized the truth. This was no chance encounter. These men weren't lost tourists. They were trained operatives on a mission. They called themselves travelers in need of water, but Sarah's instincts screamed otherwise. As Mlan stood on her porch, the polite veneer cracked, revealing ice behind his gaze. You've mistaken me. Sarah's voice was steady, but her heart pounded. I'm no lieutenant, and James would never. Mlan cut her off with a grim smile. He wasn't as careful as you think. I know exactly who you are, Mrs. Blackwood. I know about the stone. Sarah's grip tightened on her shotgun. There is no stone. He raised an eyebrow. Your husband hid something before that helicopter crash, a gift for you. A stone containing every secret he uncovered about Project Chimera. Evidence he died protecting. Now it belongs to us. Michael stepped forward, pulse racing. You had no right. Mlan's hand swept toward the holster at his hip. Rights don't matter. Orders do. A chill wind stirred as Mlan's men emerged from behind the house, 6 rifles leveled. The harmless visitors had become hunters. Sarah had prepared for this. Trenches, hidden pitfalls, burning sands primed for collapse. But never had she imagined a betrayal so personal. You trained her well, Mlan told his team, but not well enough. Search the house. Don't spare the boy. Michael's eyes met his mother's. No words were needed. She nodded once, and in that instant, the battlefield transformed. The air crackled as Sarah activated silent alarms, buried sensors, sending shocks through the waiting earth. Gravel shifted beneath the intruder's boots. Mlan laughed, thinking her bluff. But when the first shotgun blast echoed and the ground erupted in a hidden sinkhole, panic surged. Men tumbled into darkness. Horses reared, and in the chaos, Sarah and Michael vanished behind the sun-bleached walls. Twisted loyalties, hidden betrayals, the strangers were no mere opportunists. They were the spearhead of a covert campaign to reclaim what James had stolen, and they would stop at nothing to break Sarah's resolve and seize the deadly secret she carried. Sarah's ears rang with the echo of collapsing earth as the first group of assailants vanished into the hidden sinkhole, their shouts swallowed by the sudden darkness. Without hesitation, she grabbed Michael's arm and pulled him into the cover of the barn's shadow. Go, she hissed. To the control panel. Activate Protocol 2. Michael sprinted across the dusty floor, feet kicking up fine sand, and pressed a sequence of switches hidden beneath the workbench. Outside, distant hissing announced the release of tar sands across the approach, sticky traps that would slow and mire anyone who dared to pursue. Sarah checked her shotgun, racked a shell, then stepped into the doorway, voice calm yet commanding. You wanted water, here's your drink. 3 figures emerged from the swirling dust, sinking into the tar as they advanced. One struggled, pistol drawn, arms smeared in sticky black. Before he could fire, Sarah's shotgun boomed, dropping him where he stood. The blast echoed against the barn walls, a reminder that mercy was a luxury she no longer afforded. From behind, Michael's rifle cracked twice. 2 down, he reported, voice low. but steady. 3 spread out near the greenhouse. Their traps were in motion. Sarah and Michael moved like wraiths through their own land, each footstep measured, each breath controlled. They had drilled these responses for years. Every defense James had built was now a weapon against those who had come to claim his legacy. In the greenhouse, the intruders fanned out. The mesh netting shimmered in the midday sun as they searched for supplies. Michael slipped to a side window and flicked open a hidden latch. The air hissed as a compressed air canister released a cloud of pepper spray. Men coughed, stumbled blind with tears. Sarah appeared among them, shotgun leveled. "Too bad you didn't ask for directions," she said, eyes steely. The men recovered quickly, guns aimed, but the greenhouse had few firing angles. Michael dropped the second canister, sealing the door behind them with a loud clang. Panic set in as the air turned acrid. "Mom, the fence line," Michael called. "They're regrouping by the northern gate." Sarah nodded and they emerged from the greenhouse's backside. Across the way, 6 riders dismounted from their horses, circling near a breach in the fence. Michael had anticipated their move. He sprinted to a control box by the gate, fingers flying over its switches. A low rumble shook the ground. "They're not leaving," Sarah muttered. The breach gate slammed shut just as the men reached it, metal bars dropping into place with a deafening clang. With nowhere to go, they drew weapons. But Sarah and Michael were already disappearing into the labyrinth of trenches James had dug beneath the sands. The mother and son team slipped into the first trench, which ran beneath a seemingly solid patch of ground. Above them, the enemy fired blindly, bullets ricocheting off hidden supports. Michael whispered, "Ambush point in 50 yards." Sarah crawled forward, heart pounding. Dust filled her lungs, but she kept her focus. They reached a concealed firing port. Sarah aimed her rifle through the slit and squeezed the trigger. One figure dropped. Michael followed suit, and another rider crumpled inside the trench. "Keep moving," Sarah said, voice harsh. They crawled through interconnected tunnels emerging near the water wells, hidden beneath the barn. Above, the attackers were regrouping, mounting horses, but Sarah had planned for every angle. She and Michael slipped through a narrow hatch into the cellar where James had stocked emergency supplies. Inside, Sarah retrieved a satchel from beneath a floorboard. "This contains dehydrated rations and a map to the northern caches. We need to move before they seal the place." Michael checked his rifle's chamber. "We're outnumbered." Sarah met his gaze. "Numbers don't win wars. Strategy does." Before they left, Michael flipped a switch on the wall. Far above, a generator thundered to life, powering hidden floodlights. Suddenly, the barn's windows shone blindingly bright, momentarily disorienting the riders. Horses reared. Men shouted as the glare cut through the desert gloom. Sarah grabbed her son's hand. Out the root cellar. They slid through a secret tunnel carved beneath the farmhouse into the root cellar, then climbed a ladder to emerge behind a false boulder at the property's eastern fence line. The desert opened before them. Open ground filled with unseen dangers. Sandstorms could obscure vision. Sinkholes could swallow legs, scorpions lurked beneath rocks. "Stick to the plan," Sarah whispered. "First waypoint is Dead Horse Canyon, 15 miles east. We move at dusk." Michael nodded, adrenaline surging. As mother and son melted into the lifeless expanse, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the dunes. Behind them, the generator's lights still burned, a decoy to draw the enemy's fire. In the silent desert, Sarah Blackwood and her son became ghosts, silent, deadly, and determined to survive. Their land was now a battlefield of shifting sands and cunning traps, but each step brought them closer to safety and another deadly confrontation. Their journey had begun. As the twin suns dipped low, Sarah and Michael pressed on toward Dead Horse Canyon, their silhouettes thin threads against the endless expanse. Exhausted but resolute, they paused at a rocky outcrop marking their halfway point. Michael checked the map, brows furrowed. "Mom, this isn't right." His finger traced a series of contour lines that led not east but north toward the ranger station they had hoped to avoid. Sarah's heart skipped. They must have moved the caches. She examined the ground, no sand scars from earlier visits. James said not to trust painted markers after monsoon rains. "We need to adapt." Michael nodded, but before they could pivot, a low roar split the air. A Black Hawk helicopter descended onto the dune behind them, rotor wash whipping sand into blinding plumes. Michael raised his rifle, eyes wide. "Military, not them." Sarah blinked against the wind. "That's Collins's call sign. He's coming for the stone." Relief and dread warred in her chest. "Agent Collins?" James's allies should be their salvation. But why so soon and with such force before they could signal? The helicopter's cargo ramp dropped, revealing four armed soldiers in tactical gear. FBI tactical team, not Westbrook's men. The pilot's voice crackled over a megaphone. Sarah Blackwood, this is Agent Collins. Stand down and surrender the stone. Michael hesitated. We can't let them take it without proof of chain of custody. Sarah raised a hand. Not like this. Suddenly the soldiers fanned out weapons trained. Their intent was clear. Seize the evidence at any cost. The helicopter's blades whipped mercilessly, erasing their footprints. Sarah exchanged a look with Michael. We've been set up. The shock of betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Their greatest hope had become a harbinger of new danger. As the desert wind howled around them, mother and son steeled themselves for a fight on two fronts against old enemies and new allies turned adversaries. Sarah felt the helicopter's rotors die. Agent Collins's men fanned out behind them, but her immediate concern lay elsewhere. Michael's jaw was set, eyes narrowing as he surveyed the soldiers. They're not after survival, they want control of the evidence. She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. We'll lead them away, draw fire, then loop back to Eagle Eye's caches in the canyon. Collins's voice crackled over a handheld megaphone. Sarah, please, this is sanctioned. You have to turn over the stone for the greater good. Sarah raised her voice so her son could hear. Run south toward the mesa, then east to the old Apache Trail. I'll meet you at the cave system. Michael hesitated, conflict flashing in his eyes. But what about you, God? She commanded, gently pushing him toward the dunes. He sprinted off, silhouette swallowed by swirling sand. Sarah turned her attention to the approaching agents. She retrieved the stone from her breast pocket. Its weight a cold reminder of all she'd lost. Agent Collins, she called out. If you want it, you'll have to earn it. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not your enemy. Sarah activated the steel clasp on the stone's leather case. Prove it. Behind her troops, advanced weapons extended. At her signal, Sarah dashed to her left, weaving through sand-swept boulders. Gunfire erupted. Bullets kicked up sand where Sarah had stood moments before. She dove behind a rock, heart racing. Emerging briefly, she lobbed a smoke grenade toward the agents to obscure their vision. The desert air filled with a cloud of pale gray, giving her a narrow window to move. Sarah sprinted down a shallow wash, ducking under mesquite branches. Every step was measured, every football silent. She glanced back to see Collins's team regrouping, splitting into two search parties, one pressing the trail, the other establishing a perimeter. In her pack, Sarah carried 2 water canteens, ration bars, a small first aid kit, and the satchel of emergency supplies. More importantly, she carried the knowledge of every hidden cache James had prepared, each placed at strategic intervals along ancient Apache trails. As she crested a rise, the canyon entrance came into view, a yawning gap in the rocky ridge. Sarah felt renewed hope, but knew her pursuers would be close behind. She ducked into Dead Horse Canyon, pressing her back against a sun-warmed wall. Eagle Eye, she whispered. No response, only the wind's tortured howl. She slipped through a narrow fissure and emerged onto a ledge overlooking a hidden cave entrance. Ahead lay the first of Eagle Eye's caches, a hollowed crevice containing fresh water bottles and spare ammunition. Sarah paused, scanning above and below. The flick of a scope lens told her she wasn't alone. A sniper position, Collins's men had brought heavy equipment. Bullets spattered against the rock inches from her shoulder. Sarah dove behind cover as a round sprayed the ledge. You're cornered. Mrs. Blackwood came a shout. Drop the stone. She pressed her lips together. Any hesitation could be fatal. Reaching into her belt, she grabbed a small, handheld mirror. Flipping it up, she caught the sun's rays and flashed a blinding signal at the sniper's position. The man fired wildly as the reflection danced along the canyon walls, buying her a precious moment. Sarah moved briskly to the cache, yanked open the crevice, and poured water into an empty bottle. Then she scooped 2 boxes of .308 rounds and a compact medical kit. The cave mouth yawned before her darkened foreboding. Behind her, voices echoed off the stone. Collins's team had split into 3 squads, sweeping the canyon floor. One group moved along the ledge above, cutting off her exit. Another crept along the canyon floor. The third fanned out to both sides. Sarah realized she had to draw them together. She strapped the stone to her belt and lobbed a small trip flare down the canyon floor past the cache. It skittered across the sand, emitting high-pitched clicks. Instinctively, 2 agents rushed down to investigate, footsteps crunching closer. As they neared the flare, Sarah ran deeper into the cave system, slipping through a series of constricting passages she knew only James and Eagle Eye could navigate. The two agents followed, guns-ready voices, muted by the stone walls. Inside the cave, the air cooled and Sarah's racing heart steadied. She passed a cache of dehydrated food and a hand-crank radio hidden behind a false rock panel. Reaching another winding corridor, Sarah paused, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. A radio crackled from her pack's small receiver. Michael's voice urgent. "Ma, they caught up to me. There's a roadblock at the ranger station. They won't let me pass." Sarah's pulse hiked. "Hold on, Michael. I'm close, just a little further." She moved swiftly through a narrow tunnel painted with ancient pictographs, her husband's secret route. At the tunnel's end awaited a small ledge overlooking a dry creek bed. From here, two paths diverged. One led to Eagle Eye's main hideout. The other climbed to a shepherd's ledge high above. Choosing the high path, Sarah ascended carefully, handholds rooted in centuries-old indentations. Behind her, the agent's boots echoed, gaining ground. Reaching the ledge, Sarah found Eagle Eye's Falcon rifle in a cache of sniper rounds. She dropped to one knee, loading the rifle with practiced ease. Through the scope, she saw the agent squads converging below 20 armed men spread across the canyon floor into the ledge route. Sarah exhaled, steadying the crosshairs on the nearest target. Her finger hovered. Then she squeezed. The shot rang out, echoing through the canyon, and the lead agent crumpled. Chaos erupted below as men dove for cover. Sarah fired again, each shot precise, each target falling. Behind her, the cave entrance that shimmered in the fading light as Michael stumbled into view, pursued by two agents. His rifle drawn, he fired two shots, dropping them both. He raced up to her ledge, breathless but alive. "Mom," he panted, "they won't stop." Sarah nodded, eyes steely. "Then neither will we." Together, they melted back into the cave's depths, carrying the stone, their ammunition, and an unbreakable resolve to reach Eagle Eye's refuge, where the final battle for truth and survival awaited. Sarah and Michael crept through the candlelit cave passages, every drip of water and shift of stone magnified in the stillness. Ahead, Eagle Eye's hideout emerged, a natural chamber, reinforced with rock shelves bearing weapons and emergency rations. Relief washed over them, but before Sarah could breathe, a familiar voice cut through the silence. "Thought you'd need backup." They spun to see Sullivan the tracker, who once served with James, stepping from the shadows with his Barrett M82 rifle leveled at them. His lined face was unreadable, but his posture spoke of betrayal. He'd slipped away from Land's ranks, only to find his own loyalties torn. "Sarah," Blackwood Sullivan said quietly, "you should have run when you had the chance." Michael tensed beside his mother. "He's with you." Sarah's voice trembled with shock. Sullivan's gaze softened. "I came to help you finish this on my terms. Milan's no longer the only enemy. Collins's team compromised the mission. Westbrook will come himself." Sarah's heart sank. Four fronts of danger: Milan's hunters, Agent and Collins's operatives, the unforgiving desert, and now the very man she once considered an ally turned unpredictable wildcard. Eagle Eye emerged, guiding a wounded agent from the shadows. "Sullivan, thank you," he said. "We need all the help we can get." Sarah closed her eyes, steeling herself. "Then let's finish what James started." In that moment, the cave's secret sanctuary became the staging ground for the final confrontation, where alliances would shift like desert winds, and the true cost of truth would be laid bare. The glow of a single lantern illuminated Eagle Eye's cavernous hideout, where an eclectic arsenal was arrayed on stone shelves: knives, compound bows, scoped rifles, and ammunition meticulously organized. Sarah settled the stone on a makeshift table, its etched surface catching the flicker of light. Eagle Eye knelt beside her, gently examining the object. "This contains everything," he murmured. "Coordinates, personnel files, footage, proof of Project Chimera's atrocities. Once we transmit this, Westbrook's empire crumbles." Sarah's gaze hardened. "Then we leave no margin for error." At her side, Michael checked his mother's back as he strapped on a tactical vest. Sullivan reassembled a specialized radio transmitter under Eagle Eye's guidance. Shadows danced across the cave walls as they outfitted themselves: smoke grenades, night vision goggles, and a small shoulder-mounted uplink antenna for secure transmission. "Time is short," Eagle Eye said. "Westbrook will move fast once the FBI realizes the stone is gone. He has local assets, Sheriff Harris among them." Sarah grimaced. "We anticipated civilian complicity. We bypassed the ranger station entirely and head west trails, safer there, fewer eyes." She consulted a hand-drawn map spread on a rock slab, tracing a route through a labyrinth of slot canyons and sinkholes known only to Apache trackers. From Mountain Pass, we ascend to the ridge. The uplink station lies at the summit, old military repeater still functional. Sullivan looked up from the radio. It'll take 4 men minimum. I'll stay here with Eagle Eye to secure the stone. Sarah, you and Michael move us into position. We'll transmit once you give the signal. Then we rendezvous at Eagle Eye's second cache 30 miles south. Sarah nodded. Agreed. She placed a reassuring hand on Michael's shoulder. Ready? He met her gaze, determination burning. Always. They crept toward the narrow exit tunnel. Outside, night had fallen and the desert moon cast pale light over the rocky terrain. Sarah felt the familiar hush of the desert night, both comforting and ominous. She led her son across shifting rocks, each footprint silent. Above, vultures circled in the ghostly glow, scanning for carrion. As they reached an open clearing, Sarah paused. The canyon's walls loomed like silent sentinels. From her pack, she drew 2 pairs of night vision goggles. Michael slid his on. The world transformed into shades of green and black. Silhouettes came alive as they moved through the labyrinthine passages. Hidden tripwires crisscrossed the path, James's final gifts to any who would follow. Sarah motioned to Michael. He breached one wire with a looping stick, tripping a flashbang behind them. The burst of light echoed startling rats from crevices and sending desert foxes fleeing. Heart pounding, Sarah moved forward. Every step brought them closer to their goal and deeper into danger. She remembered James's words, trust the desert but respect its traps. Ahead, a narrow slot funneled into a rocky staircase. They ascended, breath visible in the cool night air. At the ridge's base, the old repeater station perched precariously on a rocky outcrop. Metal panels dented by rust solar cells cracked from decades of exposure. Sarah kneeled beside a weathered cable junction box. Michael handed her the uplink antenna. She fitted it onto Sullivan's modified radio. Turn it on, she whispered. The transmitter hummed as it booted, lights blinking in sequence. Eagle Eye's voice crackled through a small earpiece. I'm live. Coordinates locked. Begin transmission. Sarah touched the stone's case, then held the antenna steady. A series of low-frequency tones emitted carrying encrypted data across FBI channels. Her pulse raced as bars on a small display flickered from 1 to 5 signal strength rising. Uploading 30%. Sullivan's voice was tense. They're jamming us! Wood creaked behind them. Collins's team had found the repeater station. Sarah glanced over her shoulder. Headlights swept across the canyon floor. 2 SUVs cresting the ridge. Flashlights cut swaths through the night. Keep going. Sarah urged Sullivan. We have to finish. A soldier's shout echoed. Stop transmitting. Hands where we can see them. Michael raised his rifle, but Sarah grasped his arm. No, let them come. The canyon walls amplified every footstep. Collins's men emerged onto the ridge in silhouette, 5 agents armed with rifles and sidearms. The narrow space forced them into a single file. Sullivan's voice broke. Upload stalled at 80%. Sarah pressed the antenna tighter. Hold the line. The sound of splintering wood. Someone had dislodged the repeater support post. Sparks flew as wires detached. The display blinked. 50%, 25%, 10%. Almost. With a final beep, the display read 100% transmission complete. The uplink cut replaced by a steady tone. Sarah exhaled in relief as distant sirens pierced the desert night, backup agents racing toward them. We did it, she whispered. But the fight was far from over. Westbrook's forces would storm the repeater any moment. She turned to Michael, resolve unwavering. Time to vanish. They slipped down a side ledge, descending quickly into the canyon's dark veins. Behind them, the summit crackled to life with the approaching roar of engines and armed shouts, agents descending the ridge. As mother and son disappeared into the labyrinth, Eagle Eye's voice crackled in their earpieces. I've got the stone secure. Head to the second cache. Sarah set her jaw. Let's finish it. In the hush of the desert night, with evidence in the hands of justice and danger at their heels, Sarah Blackwood prepared to confront the final storm. The final confrontation began at first light, when the desert's chill clung to every crevice and the sky bled pale gold. Sarah Blackwood stood at the mouth of the hidden canyon entrance, stone strapped to her waist, rifle cradled in her arms. Below her, Mlan's forces, reinforced by local mercenaries and a squad of rogue deputies, advanced in tight formation. Their leader, the once loyal Milan, wore a grim expression that spoke of personal betrayal as much as duty. Sarah's breath came steady. Beside her, Eagle Eye readied his Barrett M82 sights trained on the ridge above. Sullivan checked the loaded magazines in his rifle hands steady, despite a wounded shoulder. Michael crouched behind a Boulder rifle loaded with armor-piercing rounds. In this moment, the Blackwoods and their allies were outnumbered 4-1, but they embraced the desert's advantage and every trap they had set over the past days. From Land's vantage, the attack would come swiftly, two assault teams flanking from both sides of the canyon, while a sniper overwatch perched high on the ridge aimed to eliminate defenders. But he did not know that the canyon walls themselves had become Sarah's weapons. "On my mark," Sarah whispered. "Eagle Eye, your shot first." Sullivan, support fire. "Michael, hold the center. I'll draw them in." Eagle Eye nodded, finger resting lightly on the trigger. He inhaled deeply and exhaled, connecting crosshairs on the sniper's silhouette. At the muzzle blast, the canyon reverberated like thunder. The sniper slumped, rifle slipping from numb fingers, and the mercenaries below froze. Simultaneously, Sullivan released two smoke grenades that rolled down the slope, erupting in thick clouds along the approach paths. Mercenaries shouted, guns fired blindly into swirling gray. Sarah sprinted into view, lobbing flashbangs that detonated with concussive blasts, each designed to disorient and fragment enemy lines. Emlan's team staggered, falling into Sarah's carefully laid crossfire. Michael rose from behind cover rifle aimed at a tight choke point. 3 o'clock, he shouted. 3 men charged, blinded by smoke. His shots rang true, 1 down, 2 retreating. He reloaded, heart pounding, then sprinted to the rocky side to flank them. From the opposite side, Sullivan opened fire, each shot deliberate, picking off armored mercenaries who tried to regroup. Behind him, Eagle Eye shifted positions, his rifle echoing across stone, creating a hail of high-caliber rounds that forced Mlan's squad to hunker behind rocks. In the chaos, Mlan found himself advancing alone, pistol drawn, scanning for Sarah. He saw her silhouette moving fluidly along a narrow ledge. He raised his weapon. "Sarah," he called, voice echoing. "This ends now." She paused, rifle dangling at her side, windswept hair framing a face carved by loss. "It never had to begin," she replied softly. He stepped forward, deputies rushing to cover. Michael emerged, nearby revolver trained on Mlan's flank. Eagle Eye and Sullivan both had eyes on the corridor above. Mlan's deputy barked, "Take her alive. The stone, he wants it whole." Sarah's lips curled. "The only thing he wants whole is your conscience." She pivoted, charging the narrow path. Mlan fired. Bullets spattered rock at her feet. Sarah dove laterally, sliding into cover behind a boulder. She rolled, weapon raised, then unleashed a burst of fire that knocked Mlan's deputy off his feet. Michael moved in, tackling the second deputy before he could fire. Above, Eagle Eye's last shot fractured a boulder, sending debris down the slope and creating a barrier between the flanking squad and the others. The mercenaries' momentum faltered as rocks crashed, forcing them into crouched defense. Sullivan seized the opportunity, racing down the slope and engaging 3 men who tried to bypass the rockfall. His wound throbbed, but he pressed every advantage, firing from the hip with lethal accuracy until they fled, retreating toward Mlan's position. Mlan reoriented, seeing his forces in disarray. His eyes locked on Sarah. He dashed across open ground, deputies in tow. Sarah fired a shot that kicked sand at his feet, forcing him to break his momentum. She dashed toward a narrow crevice leading deeper into the canyon. Mlan gave chase, wearing body armor but no cover. Michael yelled, "Mom, the crevice." She slipped through the gap. Mlan lumbered after, but his bulk wedged against rock. Sarah turned, raising her rifle against his unprotected side. "Your orders cost my family everything," she said, voice cold. "Now you'll answer for it." Mlan cursed, leveled his pistol. "You know nothing of orders and loyalty." Before he could fire, Eagle Eye's heavy round thundered through the canyon, severing a rock support overhead. A cascade of stones crashed down on Mlan, who shielded his head, tumbling backward. Sarah lunged, knocking the pistol aside. She wrestled Mlan to the dusty floor, flashlight flickering in Mlan's pounding eyes. "You killed my son," she spat. "You'll never atone." Mlan, bleeding and stunned, coughed. "I was following them, Westbrook's orders." His voice cracked. "I didn't want their pain, but if I had refused," Sarah's grip tightened on his collar. "You had a choice, and you chose death." She pulled a combat knife from her belt and pressed the blade to Mlan's throat. His eyes widened. She glanced at Eagle Eye, who nodded once. Sarah dropped the knife and stood pulling Bland to his feet by the collar. "Live with your failure," she said, shoving him towards Sullivan. "He'll decide your fate." Sullivan slapped on handcuffs, securing Bland as deputies surrendered around them. Michael emerged from the shadows, breathing hard but triumphant. "It's over." Sarah sheathed her rifle, retrieving the stone from her belt. Eagle Eye stepped forward, wiping sweat and blood from his forehead. Collins's voice crackled through a small earpiece. Sarah confirmed the stone is secure. Sarah held it to the light. "Transmission successful. Stone secure. You can release the perimeter." A distant roar signaled approaching law enforcement vehicles. FBI tactical trucks, armored SUVs, driven by honest deputies and backup agents who had recognized Collins's legitimate commands. Blue and red lights flashed across ridgelines. Sarah exhaled deeply. "It's done." Michael approached, voice tight with emotion. "Mom, is this how we remember them?" She placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, we remember them by what we do next." Eagle Eye and Sullivan led the prisoners away. Sarah took one last look at the battered canyon, now silent except for distant sirens. The desert, once a battlefield, had reclaimed its calm. Michael stepped beside her, eyes bright with tears. "What now?" Sarah slid the stone into a secure case and tucked it into her pack. "Now we carry on. For James, for Michael, for everyone who deserves the truth." She turned to the arriving agent's, voice steady and strong. "I'm Sarah Blackwood. The desert won't forget this, and neither will justice." As the first FBI teams moved in to secure the crime scene, Sarah and Michael walked side by side back toward Eagle Eye's hideout, stone in hand, and future uncertain, certain only that the desert had tested them and they had prevailed. The sky had shifted from fiery dawn to clear morning blue as law enforcement secured the canyon, and the fleeing embers of conflict faded into dust. Sarah Blackwood stood among uniformed agents and deputies, the weight of what had transpired settling in her bones. Agent Collins approached, his expression solemn yet respectful. "The evidence is being cataloged now. Westbrook and his key operatives have been arrested, charges filed on multiple counts: illegal, human experimentation, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Your son's sacrifice and your courage made this possible." Sarah's gaze drifted to the empty canyon floor where Michael had fought to protect her. "It was never just me," she said softly. "Michael, for him, I will keep his memory alive." Beside her, Michael shook his head. "It was our fight, together." Collins nodded. "The Department of Justice will assign a memorial plaque at the site next week, public recognition of your family's sacrifice." A hush fell as Sarah imagined turning the canyon entrance into a place of remembrance rather than violence. She saw families visiting, reading James's story, Michael's courage. The desert's harsh beauty would become a backdrop for healing. Later, back at the remnants of Blackwood Farm, Sarah and Michael walked the scorched earth. The greenhouse frame stood charred but intact. The well covers lay cracked, hiding hidden wells that still held water. Sarah knelt, touching the grainy soil. "We'll rebuild," she promised. "Stronger. We'll honor Dad's designs and Michael's vision, restore life here." Michael offered a small smile. "I'd like that." She stood and turned to the camera. "Your ears, dear audience, have heard our story. This land, brutal yet beautiful, tested us. Yet we found purpose in truth and resilience in each other. If you've been moved by our journey of sacrifice, legacy, and justice, there is more to explore. Consider subscribing for deeper dives into personal stories of survival and courage. Share this video with friends who value perseverance in the face of adversity. Comment below. What would you fight to preserve when everything else is stripped away? Subscribe to join our community. Share this story to honor those who risk everything for truth. Comment with your reflections, which moment inspired you most. We have more content planned, interviews with survivors, behind the scenes of our desert training, and deep investigations into real-world injustices. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. As the sun climbed higher, Sarah and Michael loaded the last supplies onto a restored all-terrain vehicle. Eagle Eye arrived leaning on a walking stick, battered but alive. He smiled at Sarah. "The desert endures," he said, "and so will you." Sarah climbed into the driver's seat. She looked back at the blackened farmhouse, memories etched into every beam. "Thank you," she said to Eagle Eye, and to the sacred land that had shaped her. Then she started the engine. The tires crunched over rebuilding soil as they drove toward a new horizon, toward hope, toward community, toward life reclaimed. For all of us who face impossible odds, remember when you stand for truth, no force can bury your legacy. Subscribe, share, comment. This is Sarah Blackwood signing off until our next story of survival and spirit.